The candidates are Yanxiu Wu, Nabeel Ahsen, JiaRui, Hadia, Bilal, Ahmad, and Kristina, Akhtari. The first question we have for the candidates is, what is the biggest problem facing Marc Garneau CI, and how do you plan on tackling it? This question has 2 minutes of initial time and 1 minute of refutation on request. So I'll pose this question first to Mr. Wu.
So do I start whenever I'm ready?
Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you.
Or like, promptly, please.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. So thank you, Mahan, and again, thank you for the Reckoners for hosting this debate. It's a great way for all of us to get our issues and our stance out, I guess, in a very detailed way. So I guess I'll move on to the question now. The biggest problem I see in Marc Garneau right now is to recover back from Bill 115 and the damage that it has done to the students. So many of us still might see the bill as, somewhat of a shadow that was that has moved on a few months ago, but unfortunately, I have to say that this is not the case. Although the job action is over and that teachers are gradually returning to hosting club events, I think it still takes a very, very long time for us to truly go back to where we were before. So a lot of our students that talk to us, like, why is our sports team not back? Why is track not running? Because in the end, it's still a matter of restoring goodwill between the teacher and going back to the way it was. So I think it's really, really important for us to work on this and to see what we can do regarding bringing back the old time when we have a lot of sports teams and the students can optimize their student experience in Marc Garneau. Now, in this point, I would just like to say that it's not we will not be pressuring the teachers in any way, but rather we will sort out our own strategy in terms of coping with the damage and gradually reforming back to the way that it was before.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. And next, we'll be hearing from Nabeel Ahsen. The question again is, what is the biggest problem facing Marc Garneau, and how do you plan on tackling it?
Well, I feel like this is a really broad question, but I've pretty much simplified it to one big main problem. That is what I feel is the involvement in the school, and I've further broken that down into 2 subcategories. So primarily, what I feel like is the biggest problem in Marc Garneau right now is that there's a lack of involvement. And a couple of reasons for this is there's a lack of marketing and a lack of interest. So how I feel we can tackle this problem for next year is that we have a solid plan on how we get the message across the student body, because there should be some sort of manner in which we can formally communicate with the student body, that is the student council to the student body. And one of the ways we start is to create the interest. How do we create the interest? Well, see, we need a good marketing plan. We start off with the basis of why people are not being informed on time or as scheduled. And, we sort of break up the tasks and brainstorm how we can break up the task and get the message across as soon as we're pretty much set with the plan of the actual event. So that's why I feel like involvement is the biggest problem we're facing currently.
Thank you, Mr. Ahsen. We'll be hearing next from JiaRui.
In my opinion, I think the biggest issue currently facing Marc Garneau and its student body is definitely communication. Communication is so important in a student body because you can only propel a school forward when everyone serves as a united front. And to get everyone on board to listen, actually listen. And I think the thing here is that student council needs to be the one reaching out to the students, not the other way around. Student council can't be here waiting for students to come up to us. First of all, I think for the past few years, Student Council has made itself fairly inaccessible to students. Students who have ideas don't know how to approach us. Whether it be messaging us on Facebook or going to the SAC office at lunch, these are all portals of possible forms of communication, but they haven't been used properly, but they also haven't been provided and advertised properly. I've been going around this week asking individuals, sitting down with them, asking them, what is the problem? What do you want to see change at Marc Garneau? And how can we help you achieve that goal? And I've been accumulating a list of ideas and suggestions and opinions that these students have taught me in the past 3 days. So there are wonders that we can do with 365 days. To overcome this lack of communication, I would really like to form an online portal where individuals can submit their comments, suggestions, thoughts anonymously. Whether it be you don't know how to approach student council, whether it be student council isn't there in the SAC office at lunch, or whether it be you're embarrassed about what you have to say, or not sure, or conflicted, it's anonymous. No one knows who sent the message, but student council is still able to review these ideas, thoughts, and opinions on a weekly basis. And that'll form, a strong structure for student council. As we go on, student council will always be updated about what the student body wants, and it comes straight from the student body, and there are no forms of communication in between that will alter these opinions.
Thank you, JiaRui. We'll be hearing next from Hadia.
So I think the biggest problem that our school is facing is communication with students as well. So SAC communicating with students, I don't think it's actually done at all, except through Facebook and Twitter and SAC office, but students don't reach out to us. Student council should reach out to students. So basically, I think that we should have for next year a box opinion, a box, so in every class, so people can put their opinions in the box and they can have suggestions for student council. Because many grade 9 students and grade 10 students are not being heard. Because I went around the school this week and many grade 9s are saying that student council is not communicating properly with them, and that is why they're not involved in many activities and events that are happening at our school. As well with grade 10s, same thing, they're not as involved. And grade 11, 12, they're involved because they have more experience in school and they're part of student council or they have friends in student council. So I think student council needs to reach out to students.
Thank you, Hadia. And finally, we'll be hearing from Kristina.
Okay, I believe personally that the biggest problem that Garneau is facing right now is that extracurricular, the whole problem with extracurriculars. I know that it was like last semester and no one was doing the extracurriculars, they were all banned. But now we've gained from that and with the whole thing with the Bill 115, but I believe that teachers feel that it's unfair what the government did to them and the union, the whole problem with them, and some teachers are refusing still to hold like clubs that they did before, or the sports events that they did. So I think a lot of kids right now, especially like I know a couple of kids, some kids like, for example, like basketball is their life. So when basketball wasn't around, like that was one thing that motivated them to come to school, get good marks. So I feel like when that was taken away from them, sort of a motivation was like taken away from them as well. It was gone because they didn't want to really do anything else. Like they showed up to school, but the only thing that they did was like play at lunchtime. That was the only time that they got to play like the sports. And I feel like people are still complaining that there's not enough sports teams, or the clubs that ran previously are not running any longer. So I think the best thing for us to do is to put ourselves out there, talk to the students, get their opinions, and hear them out, like what we can do for them. I understand that, I believe that the teachers have the right to not do it because they were not treated fairly. But then at the same time, I feel like we should do something about it. Like maybe held an event, do like a sports day where we could play different sports with them to just like motivate them to get them back up there. Because we just sort of have to be patient. It's getting up there, but some teachers are still refusing to do it, and there are sports that are not continuing, like that are not longer with us because of the whole problem.
Thank you, Kristina. So that concludes our first answering of this question. Before the debate, I instructed each of the candidates to signal to me if they'd like to use their 1-minute refutation. None of you did that during this question, but it is the first question, so I'll ask you if any one of you would like to use your 1 minute extra to refute anything that another candidate said. No? Okay, so we'll move on. The next question is this. Some of you spoke about reaching out to the students and communicating with the student body. This question will ask you, what is the single most effective way to communicate information to the student body? This question will have 30 seconds to answer, and you'll be given 30 seconds of refutation on request. So we'll go backwards across the line now, starting with Kristina.
I believe the best way to communicate with our students is by going up to them, talking to them, and not being afraid to say, oh, hi, my name is Kristina, and I'm part of SAC, I'm the president of SAC, or I'm the special events community coordinator. It's just like putting ourselves out there and talking to them, because I feel like Facebook, all these online communications, you don't really get how they're feeling. They could type it out to you, but you don't know their emotions behind it and what they feel. So for me personally, it's talking to them.
Thank you. Next, from Hadia.
I agree with Kristina. I think speaking in person has a more effect on students. So going up to grade 9s, grade 10s, everybody talking and getting their ideas and opinions out is the best way, because Facebook and Twitter, it's kind of different. You don't really feel what they feel. So when you talk to them in person, you know their emotions and their feelings.
Thank you. And next from JiaRui.
I too have to agree with what was previously mentioned. I think one of the things that is commonly discussed is the lack of spirit in our school. And I think as student council, we're the leaders of the school, and our job is to lead. We have to set the example of being spirited, of being encouraged, of being supportive. And just transmitting that in a message online or putting up posters up won't get that effect. Students will just act as passively as we do in communicating the event in the first place. So it's definitely approaching them, running, we have a mascot, let's use that to our benefits, generating spirits, having student council members going around in the hallways, in the backfield, in the cafeteria, hand delivering these messages will definitely have a better effect.
Thank you. And from Nabeel?
Well, I'd have to agree with everything that's been said before. The most effective way of communicating is through talking with the student body, one-on-one. But one thing I'd like to add on is that I feel that there should be a minimization of the role that our SAC titles play. So I feel that if we're talking with the student body, then we shouldn't be talking as, oh, we're on student council. We should be addressing them as a student of Marc Garneau, that we all share each other's problems and we can all come with a solution together. So I feel like the best way of communicating would be to talk to someone, but without the role of a student council member.
Thank you. And from Mr. Wu.
All right. I agree with all the candidates here regarding that. Talking in person is the most effective way of reaching out to the students. However, I also just would like to point out that the student council is less than 1% of the population, and there is only so many students that we can reach out to. And at a point, we have to start looking for alternatives that also tries and reach out to a greater audience. So I think we also need to restructure our class rep system and make it effective to the point that it is both personal and also effective in terms of reaching out to a large quantity of students.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. I've just gotten word that Soheil would like to ask a question to one or more of the candidates.
So this is Scientology, because you all answered that in-person communication is the most effective way of communicating to the student body. There are over 1,800 students in our school, and with a full council, there's less than 20 of us. So how specifically are you going to try to reach all the students in the school with the limited number of counselors you have?
How long would you like the answer to be?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So we'll go backwards. We'll start with you again.
Right. Again, as I've said in my point, I think that the student council needs to find an effective way of using the class rep system so that it can be both personal but also reach out to a large quantity of students. Because class rep, although we have increased the attendance by a lot compared to last year, there's still much work to do, and it has a lot of potential of being a great tool a student council can use in order to reach out to students in a very personal way.
Okay, well,
Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to reinforce the point that I made earlier that student council already has a really big influence on the school. However, I'd have to agree that we need a better class rep system, and we should probably work towards establishing a way better, like a far improved way of reaching out to all the class reps in each way.
Okay.
I think not only do we have to enhance our class rep system, we also have grade reps, junior reps, and class reps, as mentioned previously. And I think these individuals can have so much potential and they bring so much to council, but we're not using them to the best of their ability. So definitely enhancing the system, but as well from the students, they would like to see more assemblies, just on the side.
So I agree with Nabeel and JiaRui, class reps. Like I believe this year it's not working quite well, but I think we need to work on that system of class reps. And as JiaRui said, assemblies. Many students want assemblies, and that way. And I think student council alone cannot reach out to so many kids in our school, right? So class reps, we need to work on that because that's our way to reach to students.
Like I said before, the best way to communicate with them is to talk to them. But obviously we could reach out to so many people at the same time. I mean, there's a lot of students out there, and there's 20 people, and they're in SAC. But I think like with the class drafts, we have like a meeting, once a month meeting. But I feel like at the same time, we should have like an open meeting, like so the meeting is open to everybody, like everyone could come. So you don't have to be just a class draft to come. You could be a student that's interested in what SAC is doing and interested in the events that are happening, and come out and find out for yourself. So I think hopefully once a semester meeting like once a month with all the students, inviting them out to come and see what we're doing is the best way.
Thank you. So the next question is a specific example from a situation that arose this year. I'll be mixing up the order a little bit, so please wait until I call on you before you answer. The president is accountable to both the students and to the administration. This year, student council had to decide whether or not to support a walkout to protest the use of students as bargaining chips in the union-government negotiations. Some students supported a walkout, while administrators did not. What would you do if a similar situation arises during your term? You will have 90 seconds to answer this question, and a 30-second refutation on request. I'll just give you guys 10 seconds to gather your thoughts because this is an important question. So we'll begin with Hadia this time. What would you do?
If they walk out, personally I think then, can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
I'll stop the time while I repeat the question for everybody. The president is accountable to both the students and to the administration. This year, student council had to decide whether or not to support a walkout to protest the use of students as bargaining chips in the union government negotiations. Some students supported a walkout, while administrators did not. So you have a conflicting message from the students and from the administration, both of whom you're accountable to. And so where would you need to balance the needs of both students and the administration? How would you go about doing this is the essence of this question. If a similar situation arose during your term, what would you do? We'll start with somebody else, but let's try to keep the passes to a minimum next time. We'll begin with Kristina, if you're ready.
Yeah. Well, I obviously do know that we have to respect the teachers' decisions and how they feel, and I would obviously support them. But I think the best thing that I would do if something like that happened when I was the president of school, I personally would educate the students as much as I can about the situation and tell them the truth basically, because I feel like during the time this year, there was a lot of rumors that were happening around. Teachers weren't really saying anything, and we just whatever we read in the newspaper and whatnot. And those are the only things that we actually knew about. So I feel like I would first educate them about it. But if the student body wants to do a walkout, I would definitely support them, because I am at the end of the day their president, and if they want that I would go out and support them. It's also because I'm a student and I know how it feels to take something to be taken away from me. So I would support them at the end of the day, but I would definitely have respect to the teachers and I would understand where they're coming from. But at the end of the day, I represent the students.
Thank you. Hadia, are you ready now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So students versus administrators.
Okay, so basically I think I would talk to students and find out what they have to say and what their opinions about this is. And if they're actually going to do it, then I should support them because I am their president and they elected me as their president. But at the same time, I think we should respect the teachers as well. But if the students want to do it, then I would definitely do it with them.
Thank you. And Mr. Wu.
Right. Go back to the point that Kristina made. I think it's really important that the students must be well informed of the situation first before taking any actions such as the walkout. Because throughout the Bill 115 action, lots of schools did walkouts. But in these schools, many students aren't completely aware of what exactly is happening or why are they even walking out. The entire point is just, let's walk out. Let's not be in the classroom. And I think it's more important for students to know exactly why they're walking out or what exactly is the Bill 115 situation than just the action of walking out. Because at the end of the day, if you make a reasoned choice, then sure, you can go ahead and walk out with your reason. But it's just that we need to minimize the amount of chaos that exists when these big events happen. And I think it's great that we need to increase students' awareness of what exactly goes on first. and then like go up to the discretion of whether to have a walkout or not.
Thank you. Next from Mr. Ahsen.
All right, so I feel that it's imperative that student council needs to have an unbiased point of stance as to a walkout. The whole purpose of a walkout is so that a person who strongly feels that they have the urge to walk out, to prove a message, they should be allowed to do so, and those who don't, they should not be forced to do anything. So as a student council president, I feel that we need to send out a really unbiased message, educate them as much as possible, as Kristina said, and have a very third-person stance on it rather than going towards going pro or con for actual walkout.
And lastly, we'll be hearing from Ms. Wu.
Administration plays such a vital role in our education. They're the ones that make it possible. They come every day. They come early. They leave late, and they deserve every token of respect and appreciation. That being said, at the end of the day, we are the student council. We are student representatives, and we were elected by the students. We made promises that we would listen to the students and listen to their thoughts and opinions and not suppress them or convince them the other way around. Given this situation, regardless of a strike or a walkout, I would definitely enhance and increase communication between the staff and the students. Understanding is so key in any conflict. You have to understand where both sides are coming from, and that's where you can communicate, compromise, and get a solution. Without communication and with just biases, stuff from what you hear in the news, that's never going to resolve the conflict. Definitely, in this case, I would increase communication. Again, student council is a medium. We are student representatives. We were elected by the students, and our job is to amplify the student voice.
While some of the candidates were speaking, Nabeel requested his 30-second refutation, but you spoke afterwards. Do you still want to take the refutation? Or?
Sure, actually, no.
No? Okay. So I'm told Ms. Goldenberg has a comment to add to the situation.
So I'm not here to discuss the different sides. First of all, I just want to say that I do believe that student council did communicate with the student body during the time just prior to the walkout when there was a discussion around it. The number of students that were interested in a walkout was clearly not a majority of the students in school, but it could have turned out to be that way. What we were finding when we were talking to kids who were asking us, well, should we walk out, should we not walk out, is exactly what you're saying. They weren't informed. They didn't know why. All they heard was a walkout. They thought, okay, it'd be great to go out and do it, but they didn't have the information as to what they were going to do. And in fact, if I remember correctly, and I'm old and I forget these things, but I do believe that Soheil and the rest of the kids put out the information around it. There was an opportunity for all the kids to be out and on a march on a weekend. And if you really want to make your statement, going out as a student group on a weekend when you're not necessarily out of school would be something that I certainly would support. We feel that, and I think that one of the things that you talked about, and we certainly talked about, was yes, the staff should be supported and supported by the students, and there were ways of doing it without necessarily a walkout. If anything, our MVP, who is now the Premier of Ontario, we have really good connections with our members of Parliament. They've been amazing for Garneau, and there was an opportunity to connect with them and to do petitions and send stuff out. And I think student council did lead the way on that in the past. And I just wanted to reinforce that I think as a student council, you guys did a good job on that. But the kids really, those that wanted to walk weren't really sure about why they wanted to.
Thank you, Ms. Goldenberg. We'll move on to our next question now. This one is semi-example based, but mostly open-ended. Do you think that the interests of student council take priority over those of other clubs? For example, the funding received and the priority over event dates. For example, International Show wants to fundraise the week before the show, but another club also wants to fundraise that week. So I'll be allotting 60 seconds for this question with a 30-second refutation upon request, and we'll begin our answers with Mr. Wu. Do you think that SAC has precedence over other clubs?
I would first like to say that student council every semester produces budgets, and the budget allots different components, and some of these components goes to student council events and fundings, while the rest goes to clubs. I would just like to say that whenever these events happen, after all, student council is here to make sure that the students get the maximum opportunity to learn, whether if it's fundraising or if it's to host events. So I think whenever this situation happens, student council must be the bigger man and to give the clubs a bigger chance of making their things happen. Because honestly, at the end of the day, we are the student servants, and we have to give them the best opportunity they can give. Thank you.
Thank you. And next from JiaRui.
I think it's a very difficult situation to be put under. It's basically an argument between student council, who serves for the entire student body, and a club which has a very good cause, but is representative of another organization or a smaller group of individuals. That being said, size does not determine precedence. I think that in this case, I think student council should really work to pre-plan all its events and to ensure that students have equal ability when and if the situation arises. There are obviously going to be dates when fundraising collides. International show, as mentioned, prom is coming up. In the summer days, everyone wants to do fundraising sales, bake sales. That being said, I think that students, clubs and student council can work together and can share the fundraising days if a conflict were to result. However, student council should take precaution in the beginning of the years to pre-plan everything out to minimize conflicts such as this.
Thank you, Jerry. Next from Kristina, please.
I sort of agree with Jerry because I feel like as a student council, like it's our priority to like make the other clubs and like the members of the other clubs and like put the students before us and our like events and everything. But at the same time, yeah, you do sometimes have like you guys gave an example of international show, and I ran international show this year. So like you gave an example of international show and how you have to like fundraise like money for it. Sometimes like you run like low on money, like you come to that situation where you need more money to make the show happen, and the only thing that you could do is to fundraise. And like sometimes other clubs want to do it with you at the same time. So I feel like then there should be a very good communication between those two clubs that want to do it at the same time, between the like the SAC and like the other club, so they could talk about it and so on that. But at the end of the day, I think that we as student council should put other clubs before us, because we could like do other events to raise for that event, but another club might not be able to.
Next, we'll be hearing from Nabeel.
So in regards to the question, should SAC be given precedence over an event, I feel that it should not be. But with that being said, SAC is a representation of the student body, and budgets are allotted, as Wu mentioned before. Budgets are allotted along with time slots. There is a schedule, and should there be a confliction like this in the future, then I feel like we need to reinforce the schedule system, like the scheduling system, and even refer back to our democratic process, where if they feel that they need more support from SAC, then we put it to a vote. We let them, because it is a really inclusive environment. So we cannot take away their right to fundraise or, fundraise.
Thank you. And finally from Hadia.
I agree with JiaRui. I think student council needs to plan ahead of time and plan their events and the dates for the events. Like this year, student council they get elected, so I think they should sit down and they should like put down the dates they want for the events and the shows, so it doesn't collide with other clubs. And I think student council should put clubs before them, because we are the student body. We're representing student body, so I think we should support the clubs and we should give them as much money they need, and we should put them before us.
Okay. I will present the next question, and then we'll go to a 1-minute break for you to think about it. What is the best way to address the cultural and socioeconomic divides in our student body? We'll recess for about a minute, and then we'll show back. 1-minute reputation of content. So, first off this time, we'll be hearing from JiaRui.
I think culture is such a beautiful thing because it's worldwide. It's inevitable in every school, and Marc is evidently culturally diverse. We have individuals from a variety of religions, backgrounds, social, ethnicities, and it's great to see them all together. In terms of the role that culture plays in dividing the student body, I think there can be more events, such as International Show that was hosted by Kristina this year, to promote the sharing of culture. Culture is nothing to be embarrassed about, and all through elementary school, I was always supported by my previous schools, to be proud of the ethnicity and the background that you represent. And to do this, they really promoted, International Clothing Day, where you come to school and dressed up, representing your religion, your culture, sharing information with other people, educating them, having multicultural lunches where you're, exposing other people to cultures and experiences that they would never have the opportunity to otherwise. I think that's really important too, and that will definitely promote better acceptances and better understanding of different cultures. In regards to socioeconomic divides, I think fundraising on behalf of the student council's part is so essential to this point. This year we had a fun fair and it was free of charge. Everyone was welcome and everyone could attend. There were absolutely no barriers that could prevent individuals from participating and interacting with other students, including the student body, and just having a good time and celebrating the fact that you're Marc Garneau students. So fundraising, having a good budget, having a robust budget that our treasurer will definitely be able to provide, and encouraging students to approach us when they face difficulties. Again, to the anonymous online thing, if you have questions about not being able to meet the financial standards, talk to us about it. We will do whatever we can to help you overcome that. So definitely fundraising and having more multicultural events.
Thank you. Next from Kristina.
Well, like JiaRui said, that I think everyone has a very unique culture, and I think it needs to be celebrated. And one of the reasons I ran for it last year for international show, because what I wanted to do basically was to give them the best show to represent different cultures. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. It's at the end of the day, what matters is you coming out there, having a good time with your friends, and not caring about what religion do you believe in, what culture you're from. It's just coming out showing I saw people who were from a certain country, but they were wearing a certain other country's clothing. What I personally find unique, because they're Garneau is such a multicultural school that I think a lot of our students learn through their friends what kind of the different cultural clothings and different things that a culture believes in, the traditions and the religions. So I think we could hold more events at our school, make more free events that they don't have to get pay for it. I feel we need to boost up our school spirits and make them come out wanting to come out with their culture, showing them setting up maybe tables with different cultures in Garneau and showing their clothing, their foods and everything, and yet everything being free. And I think SAC needs to do something, an event like that. Whether it could be after school, during lunchtime, to just make it happen.
We'll be hearing next from Hadia about the socioeconomic divides.
Marc Garneau is a very multicultural school, and I think every culture is unique and special in their own way. And for myself, I actually learned a lot about Muslim, even though I am Muslim, and I know that there's subgroups, and I'm actually glad that I learned about that. And I think that International Show is the big event that's happening in our school, and it's everybody being involved and being multicultural. But I think this year's International Show, it was multicultural, but I think not everybody came out into the show, and I think more cultures should come out and do their own dance or something unique about their own culture, right? And I think Spirit Week should be that they can wear their own cultural clothing, and I think we should have cultural food days so people can bring their own foods and everybody can have some for free. And the fun fair that Student Council held this year was really good, and everybody came out, and I think we should have more of those events so where people can show their culture.
Thank you. We'll be hearing next from Nabeel.
Well, in regards to the culture in the school, it's already been mentioned. Marc Garneau is an extremely multicultural school, and you can just see as soon as you walk in, you see hundreds of flags on the ceiling. With that in mind, though, I feel that the way the Student Council has been addressing the multiculturalism in the school is already top-notch. We have made sure that it is an inclusive environment. We have not made anything exclusive. One example being the International Show, where everyone, as she mentioned, even people who were not given the flag of their own ethnicity, they were holding someone else's. And I feel that is a really proud point of this school, is that I feel that we've already addressed this to the maximum. So if anything, we can further include this into our future events such as Spirit Week, and maybe allocate specific events to just multiculturalism. In regards to socioeconomic divide, I feel that it can be addressed a lot better. One example was the Spirit Week, it was a first, and as she said, it was free, and a lot of people showed up because of that. Now, if SAC needs to hold more fundraisers to make this a bigger possibility, then I feel that we should go for it. This is an excellent way to address this idea that no one should be excluded because of price deficiencies. So, yeah.
Thank you. And finally, from Yanxiu Wu.
Great, thank you, Mahan. So regarding the cultural difference, I think by now all the candidates have addressed like what a diverse school that Marc Garneau is. I think in this school we have already followed a really great path on defining multiculturalism and following just like the Canadian mosaic model, where we're to show the pride in our differences, but also embrace the differences we have among each other. So events such as International Show is great in terms of providing this opportunity for us to express our different cultures. And I think student council should definitely invest in more time to create new events for this specific issue. As well, I would also like to point out that next year it will be the third year with the two new positions, the social justice representative and the equity representative, and that if elected as president, I will make sure that these two representatives will work to their best ability to address these issues and perhaps hold more events with educational effects, but all in good times. And as well for socio-economic differences, I think it is a really key issue in the school, and that we need to address this and also accommodate through as many ways as possible. Now, the Spirit Day this year has been a great example because it's, I don't know, for the first time or like the first time since how long that we had a free event, and that it had a great turnout. I think in the end we're supposed to let students have a great time, right? And with that being said, money should never be an issue. And if that's the case, then we need to promote more events such so. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is a shorter one. What's the best way to motivate student council members to meet and go beyond their duties? So this question deals with your duties within student council rather than your duties to the student population as a whole. I'll be allotting 60 seconds for this question with a 30-second refutation upon request, and we'll begin with Hadia.
I think the best way to motivate student council members is basically telling them that they ran for this position because they wanted to do this and they wanted to do it for the students of the school, and that should be their #1 motivation. And their second motivation should be that I think it should be that they ran for this position to make our school a better place, and they promised to students, for example, if you're doing a international show, they promised to go at an international show, so they should do it, and they should be motivated. Plus, their friends and their communities are going to encourage them to do it and to do a better job.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Nabeel.
Well, as president, I feel that the best way to motivate student council would be to, again, what she said, remind them why they ran, because we need to remind them of the duties that they took on prior to deciding to run for that position. Now, with that being said, another way we can motivate student council is to sort of plan one event, and based on its success, the success of one event can be a major motivation in itself. So if I feel that reminding them or talking to them isn't working, then maybe show it through example, like leading by examples. Show them how motivated you are, and in due case, they'll most likely be motivated as well.
Thank you. We'll be hearing next from JiaRui.
I really like what Nabeel had mentioned about leading by example. I think it's important to remind council members of their duties and what they signed up for, but at the same time, I think it's really important for the president to set a positive atmosphere and to be encouraging amongst his members. Everyone has those days where they're piled up with a bunch of homework and responsibilities, and there are certain things happening outside of school. And yes, you can have days where you just don't feel like doing anything. But as student council, we have a body of students because there are days like this. There are days where one person can't complete the job, and that's why we have 19 other individuals to step in, who are ready to step in, and who can do just as good a job. Again, I really like setting up a positive environment for my students. for students and council members to be spirited. Again, leading by example. If you want a spirited school, you have to show that at meetings. You have to be the leader that will create spirit amongst the council members, and then the council members can emanate the spirit across the student body.
Next from Mr. Wu.
All right, thank you. I think what was being said about the positive atmosphere within the council is utmost important, and so that the councilors will actually want to work to their best ability, because the council is great and it's just a great place to work at. With that being said, I think student council should also be more accountable to the students and to have greater transparency, because in the end we're working for the students, and if the students don't know what we're working for, then what would they know? So I would propose that the student council have weekly or bi-weekly reports regarding student outreach and advocacy. And I would also like to propose to publish our minutes and possibly have annual reports regarding our accomplishments, so that the students can be informed that the student council has did X, Y, Z, instead of not knowing what the student council did, and that through this way, student council is accountable to the students.
Thank you. And finally, from Kristina.
Okay, I think the best way to motivate student council members is to remind them that there are other students that are counting on them, because they were elected for that position for that reason. For instance, if you're gonna get up on stage and promise them a dance, then there are students counting on that dance, and they want the dance to happen. So, but at the same time, I think, like JiaRui said, the president needs to make a very positive atmosphere. So, when student council members are walking into the room for that meeting, that they should be excited for that meeting, that they would want to sit there, that it's not a drag coming to that meeting. And sometimes I feel just like JiaRui said again, she said that sometimes you're loaded up with homework, and especially if you're in grade 12, there's a lot of homework and tests and everything. Sometimes I think other members need to step up and help them out, especially if they're not organizing an event at the same time as they're just there for the meetings and talking to the students. So for instance, for a president, sometimes he or she could step up and help them out with that event, and to motivate them, to tell them, no, it's gonna happen, don't worry, we'll make it happen.
Thank you. The next two questions are personal. They're not based on your necessarily specific examples for your duties to student council, but the next two questions will not allot any time for possible refutation. And the first one is 60-second bond. The question is, what is your personal motivation for running for student council president? This could include anecdotes from before, a past experience that made you want to do this, anything really. You guys have 60 seconds, and we'll begin with Mr. Wu.
All right. So one of the main reasons why I am running for student council president is that I want to finish the job. Because this year we honestly have achieved so much within the council. We have increased the attendance of the class representatives by God knows how many meetings. We have hosted our first free event that had a great turnout, and we also had our second dance that actually happened. I think these are great signs to show that the student council is ready to have a more greater focus on more events, more advocacy for students. And I think as I have worked here for 3 years, and I do believe that I have the experience and the insight to make these happen, and to also improve things such as the class rep system. We still have a lot of work to do on that. We're working on that.
Thank you. And next we'll be hearing from Hadia.
My personal motivation is when I was in grade 10, I was a spirit convener and I organized a Christmas show, and that went really well. And I want more events like that to happen in our school. And international show this year was really a success. Plus the dance that happened with Spring Fling, that was as well a success. And personally, I know many people my friends who really want to be heard, and I think that I wanted to step up and so their voices can be heard.
Okay. Next, Nabeel, why do you want to run for president?
Well, coming from a family who promotes leadership, I feel like I was brought up to sort of lead people by example. But coming to Marc, what I noticed about student council was, oh wow, this is amazing. At the time, I did have my brother as president, so I feel like that was a very big influential influence over me. But as the years progressed, one thing I brought up in my speech was the amount of change that's been happening, and for a period there, for about a couple of years there, I was half-minded. But until I started thinking about it, and I was actually intrigued by the change that was occurring because it has such a broad range of opinions on it. So I feel that if I'm president and I've seen this change occurring, how can I use this to my advantage as president? How can I make student council better using the momentum of all this change and of all the opinions that everyone's been talking about or giving on the matter of the way that student council behaves and the way it has been behaving for the past couple of years.
Thank you. Kristina, why do you want to run for president?
I think my personal motivation, I have this thing with fairness and equality. Like if you're gonna let a specific or a certain group do something, then you should let everybody else to do it. So I want to bring equality and fairness to the school, as much as I can. Like if you're gonna treat a certain group in a certain way, then everybody should be treated that way. And honestly, I want to make Garneau feel like they're an actual high school. I want more events happening at our school, more spirit. Like every other school that I know, at the beginning of the year, every time they welcome their students with this carnival, these spirited events, and it doesn't really happen at Garneau that much. At the beginning of the year, people are tired. I mean, people are coming back from their summer vacation. Many students don't want to come to school. So I feel like my motivation is to make more events happening, make Garneau feel like an actual high school, but yet bring fairness and equality.
If I could ask you a further question.
Yes.
Where is it that welcomes their students with a carnival at the beginning of the year?
Sorry?
You spoke about schools that welcome their students with carnivals.
I know Centennial High School was in Centennial somewhere. A friend of mine went there. At the beginning of the year, her school, when they went there, they had this huge backyard carnival event. We had Spirit Week, but they had it at the beginning of the year. They had the grade 9s coming out. They had the grade 12s encouraging, telling the grade 9s their experiences and how I mean, it's very terrifying for the grade 9s to just come from a middle school, which is so different compared to high school. So I feel like those things need to happen more often at Garneau. That's one example. I mean, I can't list all the schools because I don't really know the schools.
My second question for you is, you spoke about inequalities bothering you.
Yeah.
Could you give a few examples of inequalities in Marc that you'd like to tackle as
Yes.
your term as president?
Well, to be honest, I do speak I speak to students a lot. Last year, for instance, I know I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but in this school there are certain students that get to get 2 yearbooks, and there's a certain group of students that get 1 yearbook. I feel that that's very unfair. I do understand that they're paying for it, and I totally get it. But at the end of the day, we're one school. It's Marc Garneau. It should be 1 yearbook. And okay, we could have it pages. Honestly, that yearbook is with us that we need to be reminded, oh, this person was in my class who look 10 years from now. So I feel like that's very unequal to have 2 yearbooks in school, and certain students get 2 while the others get 1. I feel like it should be 1 yearbook. That's one example. But that's just fine. I hear that's not I feel like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To finish the question, we'll be hearing from JiaRui. Why do you want to run for president?
I came into the school intimidated, and luckily I found the courage to run for student council. And even more luckily, I was elected as equity president. And I see other individuals in the hallways today, or in my classrooms, being affected by the same barriers that I was when I just came to Marc Garneau as a 9th grader. And some of these barriers are social barriers, economic barriers, cultural barriers. And I see people isolated in the hallways. But what I also see is a lot of potential, and I hear a lot of good ideas. I see people who want to make a change, but individuals who can't find the courage to do so. So whether it be us promoting initiative amongst the students, or providing them a new form of communication of which they can have access to express their thoughts and opinions, student council needs to play an active role in giving a voice to people who are silenced and who have been silenced for far too long. Another thing I'd just like to touch upon after my 2 years on student council, I don't see the students. Whenever I'm on council, I don't interact with the students, and I don't like that. Going around this week during campaign, I sat down with students and talked about how they don't see their students, and that's something I'd really like to increase next year.
At the beginning of the question, I indicated that there would not be any reputations for this, so I'm going to have to decline your reputation. The next question is equally open-ended as this one. Perhaps even more so, the question is simply, what does leadership mean to you? And we'll begin this question with an answer of 60 seconds from Hadia.
Leadership basically means to me that a leader should be a person who can have a positive environment for the students as well. They can have positive influence on the students, and they can lead them in the right way and give them the options, and then the students can decide which way to lead, to go to positive or the other way if they want to. So a leader should be someone who is dedicated, outgoing, and someone who is determined to do the best.
Thank you. Next from JiaRui, what does leadership mean?
I think leadership is having the capability, ability, and willingness to listen to what your student body is telling you. There are so many individuals who promise that, and so many individuals who don't carry that through during their term. Listening with an open heart and mind is so important because there's so many ideas and opinions that will be thrown at you as president. And as president, you're representing the entire school, and it's hard to find a compromise and a medium between the various opinions that are expressed by the student body. But being able and having the courage and the willingness to create a united front for student body is extremely important and is what a leader's main responsibility lies in.
Thank you. Next from Kristina.
Well, I think personally for me, leadership means like putting yourself out there, talking to the students, hearing them out and their opinions on whatever that's happening around school, and like JiaRui said, like going there with like an open mind, not going there like, oh yeah, this is what I think and this is what is right, but like listening to them more and like afterwards, making a plan and like giving them options. Like the main thing is giving them options, and sometimes it has to be like, you should give them many options, just not one or two. You should give them many options out there so they could choose and something that they want to do.
Thank you. Next from Nabeel, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, leadership, it is a very broad sort of definition, but what it boils down to me is that a leader usually leads by example, like I mentioned before, and this brings up the question that how does a leader expect someone to follow if he doesn't lead? So I feel that a leader does need to show motivation through his actions, through their actions, and I feel that a good leader is someone who can give a really unbiased stance through tough times, that they can address a bigger body during rough times without giving in to their own opinion. With that being said, a leader should also know when to follow through with something that is right despite the general opinion on it. So even if what they are doing is right and everyone else feels that they should not be doing it, they should still do it if it is for the betterment of the student.
Thanks. Wu, what does leadership mean?
To me, leadership is such a huge word that I think I have to break it down to maybe 4 portions. First, you have to be attentive so that you know who you're leading and what exactly they want. But other than that, there's 3 things that you need. So first is experience, which means that you know what you're doing and you have done it before many, many times, and you know what is for the best. Second is initiative, which means you're willing to go and ask people, like, what exactly do you want? Instead of asking, I expect you to do this, that. But on top of that, I think the most important thing is persistence, which is determination for the future, which means no matter how hard it gets, you will always finish the job and finish what you have started. So to me, that is what leadership is.
Excellent. We're returning now to questions that regard the school, and so 30-second refutations will be granted upon request. There are 2 questions remaining in this whole debate, the first of which is the following. As a top student, it can be difficult to reach out to non-top students, and as a non-top student, it can be difficult to reach out to top students. How do you plan on tackling this specific divide, and what role do you see tops playing in the fabric of Marc of CI? This question will be 60 seconds long with the 30-second refutation that I promised upon request. So we'll begin with Yanxiu.
Thank you, Mahan. I think this issue of tops and non-top students has to be brought up as early as possible, because in the beginning, you might not see as much of a mixture between the 2 groups, but as you progress through the grades, it just gets more and more segregated. I think it's really important to address the fact that top students and non-top students are ultimately all Marc Garneau students, and that we must be able to reach out to both groups and to see the fact that maximize the amount of interaction between the two groups through various events and activities. I think ultimately tops is a very, very important part in Garneau, but it is still equally important as everybody else in Garneau.
Thank you. Thanks from Nabeel.
Well, being president of a student council where it's both made up of tops and non-top students, I feel that the way to address this matter would be to address the student body through your student council in a very delicate manner. So have sort of a platform or a solid plan ready in the way you're going to address, even go over the diction of the way you would address your fellow peers and students and friends as to why tops and non-top students, are not really so different, because in the end we are Marc Garneau students, as he said, and that even if that means that we need to plan a separate event or a separate position just to promote the idea that we're all Marc Garneau students, that should be given priority and it should be imperative.
Thank you. From JiaRui.
So there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, that goes on between the two different groups. As mentioned before, and as I was going around to the school, a lot of individuals think that TOPS has the ability to take school funding for their own trips and for their extra yearbooks, t-shirts, whatever. But people fail to realize that there is a fee that top students must pay at the beginning of each year. That aside, I'd like to point out that it's a barrier that exists, but is it really an issue? I have friends who are not in TOPS. I have other friends who are in TOPS who also have friends who are not in TOPS. I see it as a barrier, but I don't see it as that much of a deterrent. I think that individuals are able to interact with other individuals via clubs, via sports teams, and via various events that are held by the student council. So one way to counteract this problem would be to hold more student-led events. But at the same time, I really don't see it as an issue. Yes, the barrier exists, but I see individuals taking the initiative from both sides and both parties in interacting with one another. So, yeah.
Thank you, JiaRui. Thanks from Hadia.
Number one example would be student council. As Nabeel mentioned, student council is a mix of students, non-tops and tops. And students really like that, and they see that non-tops and tops get along well. And I like to agree with JiaRui. I don't think it's a big issue at the moment. I think like everybody gets along through clubs, student council, events that happen in school. So I don't think it's a big issue.
You don't think it's a big issue?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And finally from Kristina.
Well, just like Nabeel said as well, like I think student council is a good example. Like this year we had Soheil, who was in TOPS as our president, and he did an amazing job in my opinion. He treated everybody fair, equally, and he spoke to everybody, to the non-tops and the tops the same way as he did to like everyone else. So I believe that that's one thing that that's a very good example that we need to set. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're TOPS. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're non-top students. What matters is that we're Marc Garneau students and that we need to be more united. We need to show more school spirit that yeah, we're part of Garneau and nothing's gonna break us apart. It doesn't matter if I'm in TOPS, it doesn't matter if I'm a regular student. So I think more spirit events, for sure, we should do that to make them come out more. Like sometimes I feel like if you're doing like international show, sometimes like a certain amount of students will show up and like a certain amount of other students will show up. So that's a good way to make them more united. I think spirit events would make that happen in my opinion. I do see it as an issue because sometimes they don't want to interact with each other. But I think if you make spirit events, like not force them, but make more events and like make them mix them up so they could talk to each other, so they could understand each other, where they're coming from, and understand the problems.
All right. I'm going to ask Vasily to reset the video because I'm told that needs to be done without pausing anything else. Vasily.
We're good.
You're good?
So this year I was student council president as a top student, and I got to, understand what that's really like. I think the best way to help bridge the gap and to, create the best kind of environment for everyone is to just simply increase the interaction between top students and non-top students. When top students come here, they have gone to different schools, and so they immediately make friends because they share. Then they have similar classes together, and they go on trips together. And so immediately, this group of 60 is who they interact with, and that's who they make friends with. The best way to create friendships and connections with the entire student body is to just simply increase interaction. For me, I was involved in student council, I was involved in sports teams, and that's where I met some of the best non-tops friends I could have made simply because I had a chance to interact. Most non-tops top students don't have that chance to interact. How do we create interaction? By creating school events and organizing things like that everybody wants to come to. For example, the carnival, there were top students outside and there were non-top students outside, and that's one place where we can create interaction. There's obviously sports teams and fundraisers and clubs, and those are great ways. But as student council president, I think you should strive to increase the interaction between non-tops and non-tops, and that's how you get better friendships. And important, I think JiaRui mentioned this, is to look at every single person as an MGCI student. To not look at them as a top student or a non-top student, because that's not what's important. Everyone is an MGCI student.
Thanks, Soheil. So we've got one final question per se for you guys, and then I'll lead you guys in making your final comments, so each have a chance to conclude. So firstly, the final question is this. This question regards keeping student council accountable to those who elected it, the students. This year there was significant debate regarding how much of student council's activities should be published publicly. For example, the meeting minutes or the budget. What steps would you take to keep student council accountable and transparent to the students? Going to allot 90 seconds for this question, and we'll begin with Kristina's answer.
Well, I think sometimes students get up there and they make promises that they don't end up doing towards the end of the year. And I feel like that's just sometimes that one promise there's a difference between you getting that position and you not getting the position. So I feel like when we begin the year, I think that everyone should as a president, the president should sit down with the new candidates and tell them, well, this is what you promised and this is what you said you're going to deliver. Make them sign it. I know it sounds sort of silly at times, but I think it has come down to that point, because I know that there were people last year that promised that they would do certain things that they end up not doing, and we have students complaining about that because one of the reasons that they elected them was because of the promise that they made that they end up not doing. So I think they need to be called out on it, and if they don't end up doing it, I think let the next person come take over.
Okay. Next from Hadia.
I agree with Kristina. That's true. If they ran for the position, I think they should keep the promises they make, or maybe not even make any promises when they run, and just run like that. But if they do make promises, and I think this year many students were upset with some of the student council members because they made promises that they didn't do, but I think they should keep their promises.
I'd just like to ask you again, the question is, how specifically will you keep student council accountable? Not should student council be accountable, which I think we can all agree on, but how specifically would you work to keep student council accountable? So would you like to answer that? Specifically, how will you make sure that the students know that you're keeping the promises that you made?
I think the best way would be to maybe have a Facebook page, Twitter, and the posters, and maybe talk to students yourself, have the announcements, and maybe even during lunchtime come on stage and tell students that this is what's happening in our school, so they know about it and they're aware of it, and maybe this, the class reps can go around as well and tell their classes about it, so I guess that way we can be updated.
JiaRui, what steps would you take to make sure student council is accountable to the students?
Definitely continuing to publicize meeting minutes. Budgets transparency is so key. Again, furthering the understanding and bridging the gap between student council members and student interaction with the student body, but also annual reports. That was something that Wu mentioned earlier, and I think it's a great idea. That's something, and it's something that student councils should definitely endorse. Along with that, I think that in previous years we had the agenda out. Student council members laid out their goals in the beginning of the year and set dates for everything, and that was a huge motivator because that was in everyone's agendas and everyone knew what was coming up and they knew that it had to come up. And if student council members did not, were not able to throw a dance on that day, then that's an embarrassment for the entire student council body, but also as the entire school. And so I think the agenda was a great idea, and I think that should be continued. Even if it's online, students can continue to check up, even if we're able to provide some sort of timetable that we can lay out, put it on social media sites that will inform students, this is what's going to happen, and we will work to the best of we will not work to the best of our abilities, we will make it happen, and this is what you can look forward to for the following year.
From Nabeel, how do you keep student council accountable?
Prior to answering this question, one thing I'd like to comment on is that this year with the addition of the Reckoner, I feel like the bridge between keeping things public has been short, greatly, with the addition of a Reckoner, sort of SAC associate who comes to the meetings and keeps notes that is later reported back to the newspaper. I feel like that's one way that already is diminishing. But with that being said, I'm I'm very pro for JiaRui's idea of keeping the minutes along with agendas public, along with Wu's idea of annual reports. It would just keep everyone who actually needs to know what's happening during the meetings. They'll be given full access to it publicly. But with that being said, we need to respect the idea of in the camera that before we do publicly share all of our meetings, we do need to edit them, because a lot of words are thrown around during the meeting that a lot of people might not agree with, but that's why SAC has these meetings. So everyone in SAC can come to an agreement that they can further pass on to supervisor.
Okay. Before we go to Wu, because this question is interesting for us, how specifically would you collaborate with the Reckoner next year? Of course, I'll be gone, but in general, in 20 seconds, approximately.
Okay. Like I said, I do like the idea of the SAC associate being associated with the student council, but I feel like there should be a student council collaborative page on the website of the Reckoner, so that anyone who does follow the student council page on Facebook, because they can't speak to us in person about it, they can follow on Facebook and be led to the Reckoner, who clearly reports a lot more than we do from an unbiased point of view. And that's what I like about the Reckoner, and I feel like that's one issue to the question already. I mean, yeah, that's one issue. So.
And from Yanxiu, how do you keep SAC accountable to the students?
Right. As I said before, I think the annual report would be a great idea to keep the counselors accountable for what they promised in the beginning. And because ultimately students elect people for X, Y, and Z. If X, Y, and Z are not met, and that, I guess that's not acceptable in any ways. Publication of minutes and agendas are definitely that's not even going to be a question anymore. It has to happen. However, I would just like to say that anything that is not finalized, such as unfinalized budgets and in-process budgets, should also remain in camera, just to avoid any further confusions between and unnecessary confusion between the students and the student council. And I think again, like what Nabeel said, the Reckoner student council associate is a great improvement to the student council's bridge to the student body lately, and I think that should be a continuous effort between the two parties, and we think there can definitely be a lot more potentials to that.
Yanxiu, could you clarify your idea of an annual report?
Yes.
Because the idea is to keep student council accountable to the students. So if the report comes after a year, then that's it. That's it for your term. You're gone. So.
Right. Please let me clarify that. By annual report, I do not mean at the end of the year when you publish the report. I think the student council, after they're elected, the first thing they should do, other than setting the dates for their event, is to sit down and talk about, what exactly do we want to accomplish? What will be our objective for this term? And I think over the course of 2 weeks, the student council should develop a holistic list of what exactly it wants to achieve throughout the term, so that not only will we do what is asked to do at the beginning, like the Spirit Week or Christmas show, but what we also want to strive, like the extra step that we're going to take, so that this will be published either at the beginning of the school year or at the end of the previous year, or maybe both, and so that students can keep the student council accountable. Yeah.
Thank you. No problem. So, we've reached the end of our questions. I'd like to give you each an opportunity to wrap up your points. At this point, I'd like to remind you guys that the people who are sitting here and the people who have made it this far watching online in the video have just sat through an hour of discussions regarding the school, your opinions, your motivations, and why essentially you want to be SAC president. So keeping all this in mind, keeping in mind that your audience is quite an educated one at this point, please in 1 minute wrap up your points as to why people should vote for you on Friday's election. 60 seconds, please, beginning with Hadia.
Okay, so I'm going to be assisting my platform. So I basically think we should have a better communication between student council members, better communication between student council and the students of our school, a better environment for all the students in Garneau, more opportunities and events for grade 10s and grade 9s and 10s, and as well more activities and events for Garneau. And I would just like to make a memorable year for everybody, and we'll Hadia.
From Kristina.
I think that at the end of the day, no matter who wins on this table, that each and every one of us will do great things for the school, first off, starting off. Because I think being dedicated and having a passion there and wanting it to do it for your students, putting your students first, it's what matters at the end of the day. I think bringing equality and fairness will make our school more united. Making the students more aware will make them more united. And I think that we need definitely more events happening at our school, because that's something that I think Garneau is missing out a big part. So if you guys vote me as your president, I will definitely make sure that I will keep all my promises and I will do my 110% and to make the school the best year next year of your life.
Thank you, Kristina. Next from JiaRui.
I'm all about positivity, and my friends, anyone who's collaborated with me or worked with me, know that. And I think fostering such a positive attitude within the student body is so essential to the quality of your high school experience. The grade 9s, 10s, or whatever, you're spending 4 years of your life here. You want to be in an environment where you're supported by your peers and you know that you can count on them and their encouragement. So that's one thing. Bridging the gap between student council and students. I've talked to many students, and many students have said after student council is elected, they don't see them for a year. They hibernate in that room over there, and they don't see them. And it's time that we reached out to the students, because waiting for them to reach out to us is just never going to happen, and it's not what we were elected to do. Finally, we can't let the ideas of these candidates who are not elected disappear. I've heard so many great ideas just now in the last hour from everyone, and only 5 people sitting at this table, and there's so many great ideas waiting out there, which you guys have heard during your speeches. Not being selected doesn't mean that your idea dies, and we can't let that happen again.
Thank you. Ms. Wu? Yes. First thing first, I am all for accountability. I think with more accountability and transparency, the student council will be very motivated to work for the students, and through this we can maximize our productivity to not only hold great events and traditions that have been in the school, but also take the extra step of making new events and activities that the students will enjoy. And with that being said, I am also a big fan of advocacy, and I would like to bring up the issues that students would like us to discuss about to the council room, and perhaps also bring it to the administrators so that we can have great communication between the 3 parties and hopefully get something done.
And finally from Nabeel.
Well, in regards to my presidential campaign, I am all for an inclusive environment. For me, it's all about the environment you create, and being president, you have a lot of say in the way that the environment is already set right when school starts. Through the events that happen right at the beginning of the semester. So, I mean, if anything, I'm grateful to this debate, because, as JiaRui mentioned, there have been a lot of points that have been said that were not, or for those of you who have or may not have read my platform, that were not brought up in my platform, and I feel like I should have now that I, actually touched base with like a lot of these questions, and I feel that these questions need to be, formally engaged next year as the president addresses the student council. So I feel that that's one of the major points that I would endorse as president.
I'd like to offer my highest commendation to all the candidates here. Once again, they are Yanxiu Wu, Nabeel Ahsen, JiaRui, Hadia, Bilal, Ahmad, and Kristina, Akhtari. They've just sat through more than an hour of the most difficult questions that Soheil and I could possibly come up with, and just on very quick time periods. And really, I'd just like to congratulate all of you. Thank you for coming here, and thank you to the student audience.